Testing, testing. Testing, testing. All right. Um, Again, always trying to switch things up a little bit here. Hopefully you guys are able to see and hear me now. Gonna just jump right into it. If anybody has any issues, just go ahead and send me a message. Welcome to Cooking with Baber. I think this is the sixth or seventh one of these I've done so far. It's been for the enterprise team, but now I think we have got it open to everybody at Grubhub. So I'm really happy you guys are joining me today. Uh, Quick bit of background. I've been with Level Up slash Grubhub for 7 or 8 years. Before that, I did a lot of professional chef work in kitchens sort of all across the country. So I still love cooking, love making food at home when I can't get into a professional kitchen anymore. So today we're going to be making a really delicious pasta dish. It normally is made with orecchiette. I've got some sort of wacky pasta that I've never seen before because I couldn't find orecchiette. You can use pretty much whatever you want. And it's going to be delicious. And then we're going to do a bruschetta. This one, because it's not really peak tomato season, we're going to do a roasted canned tomato bruschetta, which is going to be awesome. And so we need to jump right in because we need to get the tomatoes in the oven. So yeah, here we go. Like I said, canned tomatoes, these are San Marzanos. As long as they're whole peeled tomatoes, it doesn't really matter what they are. We're just going to go ahead and crack this can. We're not going to use any of the juices because we're just looking for the kind of nice reduced tomato flavor. So pretty much what we're going to do is, let's see here. Cool. So let's see if you can get a good view of this here. I've also got, if you're following along, cooking at home, get some water on to boil, get your oven on, 300, or I'm doing 350 convection just to do it a little faster. Let's get this going here. So basically, I've got a parchment-lined pan. We're just going to basically take these tomatoes. We're going to dump them into this bowl, and then we're pretty much just going to like pull them in half and get the seeds out of them, and then stick them on this tray here. I'm not going to be able to do all of these like this because I'm going to run out of space really fast, but no big deal. Basically, you know, if you've ever done oven roasted tomatoes, it just kind of concentrates the flavor, makes it really nice, a little bit caramelized. We don't need the seeds or anything because it will have already kind of lended its flavor to the rest of the tomato. And if you're not familiar with, you know, kind of how like canned goods work, most people kind of frown upon them, but they're actually pretty amazing. You know, they pretty much just can stuff when it is at peak season because they have so much of it. You know, so what you're getting here is it's obviously not the same as a fresh tomato, right? Because it is a little sort of stewed looking or you know, almost looks cooked because when you can stuff, you have to heat it up. But they're going to be really, really tasty, especially once we roast them. And you know, when tomatoes are not in their peak season, this is definitely the next best thing. If you're not familiar with Serious Eats, most of the recipes I end up making are Serious Eats recipes, this one included. Highly recommend checking them out. It's a great source for, you know, all things delicious. There's pretty much a recipe for anything you could want. Kenji, I think, is probably one of their better food writers. Daniel Gritzer is a good one as well. But their whole staff, I mean, Stella Parks is like one of the most highly revered baking people that exists right now. So, you know, it's a pretty awesome spot to go for recipes if you don't know what you want to make. So that's pretty much that. Again, I'm cooking for me and my wife Beth and my daughter Ellie, so don't need to make too many of these. I think the recipe called for 2 full cans, so don't need to go that crazy. But again, we just want to get these in the oven so that we can get this all done in the hour. And again, I'm doing a little bit hotter oven than it said, so we're going to probably want to check on these. I'm also doing convection just to get it that little extra oomph. So let's go ahead and switch back here. So now we're going to go ahead and prep the pasta because we can't really do much else for the bruschetta until the tomatoes are done. So for this, it's a really simple dish. Like I said before, it's basically just the pasta, which again can be any kind of you know, little pasta with kind of scoopy bits. You know, so like little shells, or you know, you could do penne, or you could do you know, I mean, you could even use like a spaghetti or another long noodle. Entirely up to you. Today I'm using this. Gosh, I don't even know what this is. Trafiglia al bronzo. This is all in Italian. I have no idea. It's this really like fun, wacky-ish shape. It's kind of like a conch shell meets a noodly boy. I don't know. It's gonna be great. This recipe is a little bit silly. This recipe for the pasta is actually not from Serious Eats. It's from Food and Wine, I think. It calls for like 3/4 of a pound of pasta, which seems totally absurd to me. I pretty much always just do the whole pound. This bag actually has 17.6 ounces because it's in Italian, so they measure everything in grams, so it's half a kilo of pasta. Probably just do like half the bag. Again, I'm only cooking for two people and a baby, so you know, it doesn't need to be nuts. I've got my water on to boil over here. I think you guys can see the stove. It's now rapidly boiling. Definitely want to heavily season your water with salt. I don't subscribe to the whole like add olive oil thing or oil to kind of you know, supposedly keep the pasta from sticking. I don't think it actually does anything, but the salt absolutely does. You know, get that salt flavor into your pasta, which is really your only opportunity to do that. So make sure you salt your water heavily. We are going to use some of the pasta water to finish the pasta to kind of get that starch that's been all cooking out of there to kind of help everything bind together. So you don't want to go too crazy. Some people say it should taste like the ocean. That's probably fine if you're not using the pasta water. But you know, if we are, you know, don't go too nuts. Just the right amount. Also, another big myth is that you need like some huge, giant, filled, boiling pot of water. Doesn't really matter. You can boil in as much water as will cover the pasta. Totally fine. Again, just be a little bit aware of the you know, amount of salt that you're adding. So I'm actually not going to start the pasta quite yet. Today is going to be kind of a relaxed day. We don't have a ton of stuff to do. Like the bruschetta is basically like chop up those tomatoes when they come out of the oven, mix it with a little bit of seasoning and some basil. The pasta sauce is basically going to be some aromatics, so some onion, garlic. We're going to do veal today. So if you're not familiar with cooking with veal, it's basically just like a young cow, really delicious, nice and tender, really mild flavor. You can totally use ground beef. I suppose you could use pretty much any ground meat for this. A little bit of white wine, some capers, a couple of herbs, some thyme, rosemary, parsley. It's just a nice, both hearty but also herby pasta. So let's go ahead and get that started. We're going to go ahead and dice up an onion. So if you guys haven't seen these or for some reason not familiar with cutting an onion, the best way to do that. So we're going to basically take the non-wispy end, so just like the root end. We're going to go ahead and cut that off. Let me get my compost bin out here so we can keep it clean. Set the onion down, cut it through the other end, then go ahead and peel off the outside. If it is easier to just take off the first layer of onion, go for it. I'm all about saving time. I think this recipe called for a whole onion, so we'll do it. It's always, you can always just sweat it down until it, loses all that volume. This onion's a little bit sad, so we're going to peel a couple of layers off here. So now with the onion flat on the cutting board, you're going to kind of put your hand down on top of it, stick the knife in, and just give it a little slice laterally. Go ahead and do the batch operations here so it's more efficient. Then we're going to cut the onion almost all the way to the back end in the width that we want the final dice to be. So again, not all the way to the end, or else you'll have pieces that go flying off everywhere. And do that same thing to the other onion. If you are looking for a nice knife recommendation, this doesn't break the bank. This is a Meissen. I believe they're made in the United States. They're a pretty recent, entry to the knife scene. Got a pretty nice knife. It's easy to sharpen. It's nice and comfortable. They don't pay me to say these things. I just like their knives. Anyways, then you turn the onion and just dice it in the other direction, and it will just fall into these really pretty, fairly equal dices. Once you get uncomfortable, you can turn the onion over, clean up the edges, turn it back, finish it up, and it's good to go. This is kind of a lot of onion. I think if it did call for a whole onion, it probably wanted like a medium onion. This one's kind of a medium-large onion, but again, not a big deal. Onion's pretty delicious, so maybe we'll do 3/4 of an onion. Seems good. It does call for diced garlic or minced garlic. Most of the time I do that just on a microplane because I'm really lazy, or I'll do it in a little mini food processor, again, because I'm really lazy. This time we'll just go ahead and do it for real. Again, I buy pre-peeled garlic. I use a massive amount of garlic, so I don't like peeling it. It's probably better to peel it, from fresh, but nobody has time for that. If you do, or you like peeling it, be my guest. So I'm just basically gonna slice this really nice and thin, and then just run through it a couple times. If that makes you uncomfortable, you can, slice them one clove at a time, or again, use a garlic press. Or the finer you make it, so like using the microplane or using the garlic press, the more garlic flavor there will be. So this is going to be, even though I use like 3 or 4 times the amount of garlic that the recipe called for, I don't think it's going to be too garlicky. It's pretty hard to make something too garlicky. Although if you go crazy with a hummus, I guess you could make it too garlicky. Anyways, this is going to get cooked, so it's going to be mild. So let's go ahead and get cooking. Get this pan on medium. I don't think we're doing much fancy here. We're just going to start with some olive oil. I don't usually cook with olive oil unless I'm really looking for that olive oil flavor, which for extra virgin olive oil, you're kind of destroying a lot of the flavor when you heat it up. With Italian cooking, it's pretty common to use olive oil. I have no problem with it here. For the bruschetta, we're gonna use like a fancier olive oil. So like the difference here being like This is kind of my cheapy cookie olive oil. This is my fancy garnishy olive oil. The price points are pretty wildly different, but it's pretty worth it to use a nice olive oil to finish stuff, especially for really simple dishes like bruschetta, where there's only maybe 4 or 5 ingredients, and each one kind of needs to bring a lot to the table. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started cooking this. Pan should be nice and hot, or doesn't matter. It's not like we're searing meat here right now. So go ahead and get all that in there. Not looking for a ton of color here. We're just gonna saute it down a little bit. Pretty simple. Anybody could do this. Heck, I mean, I won't even blame you. You want to buy the pre-cut onions and stuff, and just make your life even easier. Like, by all means, you're in charge. So again, I've got this nice package of ground veal. Super easy, pretty delicious. It says, never confined in crates, never administered antibiotics. Happy veal cows. Makes me feel good. If you guys have questions, this is going to be, like I said, kind of a chill day, so feel free to post them in the chat. I know you do have to, kind of log in or whatever. Sorry about that. I had done these on Blue Jeans, and it was kind of a pain for a number of reasons. They also swallowed up one of my recordings, but eventually we got it back. So if you guys were looking for the recording of the spaghetti casserole, that is now available. Should be on the old YouTubes right there. So that's looking pretty nice. We'll probably give it another minute or so. Go ahead and cut open the veal so that we get that ready to go. Double check that I'm doing this all right. Yeah, we got onion, we got garlic. If I was following my own ideals of doing mise en place correctly, I would have done the herbs, because those are all going to go in all together in a little while here. So, like, theoretically, I should have a nice bowl sitting on the side here, ready and waiting to go. Mise en place, of course, being the French for put in place, which is one of the most important cooking things that you can do, which is to get all your stuff ready before you actually start cooking. I think we're going to be okay here, kind of winging it a little bit. Totally fine. Just is a little bit more relaxing when you don't have to stop what you're doing in the middle of cooking and say crap, I forgot some ingredients, and scramble to find it wherever it is in the fridge or in your basement or the grocery store. All right, so that's starting to get a little bit more color than I want. I'm going to kind of turn this down a little bit. We'll go ahead and we'll put the veal in. We should have enough time while the veal is cooking to get these herbs all chopped. Go ahead and break this up. So I am starting to run out of the dishes that I had originally suggested to do this. I was thinking, so next week we're going to do, spoiler alert, a mock Chick-fil-A. So we're going to do, not mock, we're making better than Chick-fil-A. We're going to do Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich, waffle fries, and lemonade. Should be a nice, tasty little treat. Then I was thinking after that we might do a delicious steak. Just here's how you cook a steak with I do these really ridiculous loaded baked potato things that aren't really baked potatoes because I take all the potato out of the inside. But long story short, it's really good. I like it a lot, and my family likes it a lot, so maybe you'll like it a lot. Anyways, we're going to let this kind of do its thing for a couple minutes, continue to kind of break apart the veal because we don't, we want as little pieces as possible. You could use if you really wanted to get crazy, you could get a potato masher, go to town on it. Should be good enough just to use the spatula here. So we are going to need thyme, rosemary, and capers. The capers, I think we just leave whole, so we'll go ahead and do those first. If you're not familiar with capers, they're actually pretty neat. You've probably seen them on a bagel and lox sandwich or whatnot. It's actually a flower of some caper plant. I don't know. And then they just kind of pickle them, and they are delicious and salty, and I love them a lot. Most recipes, when you're putting them in like a pasta or something, you would chop them up. Like I think in puttanesca, there's capers, and you would chop them up. This one, you just leave them whole, nice and pretty. I think it's something like 2 tablespoons. It seems roughly right there. Then thyme and rosemary. So I am annoyed that I had to buy both of these because I actually grow both of these usually. I just don't think my plants are big enough to kind of support what we're trying to do here today. So let's see if I can get you guys both views here. There we go. So again, this pasta doesn't take very long, so it's about time to add the pasta to the water. But if we have to wait on that for a minute or two, that's not a big deal. So just keep breaking that up. Looking nice. So for the rosemary, the only real trick here is if you have a nice sort of sturdy stem, you can kind of just grab it about an inch from the top and just pull down. As you can see, sometimes it breaks in half, like being kind of ornery. And then just kind of pluck the remaining little bits off the top here. We're gonna do maybe 1.5 size. These are big pieces of rosemary. Thyme is the exact same thing, just in miniature. So then we're gonna need a lot more of it. So like, kind of grab it near the top. They make like all kinds of really stupid products that are like, they look like a comb, and you like you're supposed to be able to like drag the herb through it, and it like magically removes the leaves. I think that's kind of totally absurd. But if it works for you and you like it, again, more power to you, man. You got a slap chop and you like it, hey, love it. You got an air fryer and you love it, man, that's great. Do it. All right, so that is pretty much done. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off just so it can hang out for a minute. You can kind of see that pretty much all the pink is gone. We don't want to like cook this to death right here because it's gonna there's more stuff going in. So we don't need to finish it yet. We just wanted to kind of get it warmed up. And again, I didn't intend to brown it. Otherwise, I would have probably started with the meat maybe, and definitely done it at a lot higher heat. This is starting to be about enough time. Never enough time. Time is fairly mild, so it's pretty hard to overdo, especially in like the amounts that you would like pluck. The one thing you don't want to do with like thyme or rosemary is just kind of like, unless you're going to be taking it out of the final dish, you don't want to like put the whole thing in there or like chop up the whole thing because the woody bits are really not very delicious. Whatever. So yeah, I'm just gonna chop this up. Just a rough chop. You kind of want to make sure that the rosemary doesn't have any really big pieces, but the thyme already comes kind of small, so that's fine. Cool. That looks good. So we'll just add that to the capers. And again, like if I'd been smart, this would have already been done. I would have done it right after I did the onion and the garlic before I started cooking all this, and then we could have just said, oh, it's time to add the things. We'll go ahead and do that, except it's not. I forgot. We're doing white wine. So this is a thing called deglazing, where we essentially, you can see here, kind of at the bottom of the pan, we have what's called like the fond. So this is not like an extreme fond. This is just a little bit of fond. But basically, when the meat cooks in the pan, it kind of, some of the parts get stuck to the pan, and we don't want to lose that flavor. We want to scrape it up. So one of the best ways to get the fond off the bottom is with alcohol. But you can use any liquid. Usually you add a little bit of water, some chicken stock or whatever, and we'll take the fond right off the bottom. So for this, we're going to go with some white wine, Sauvignon Blanc. I'm sure it's delicious. I think I probably bought it for $5 at the liquor store. Pretty much the rule is like, if you wouldn't drink it, you shouldn't be cooking with it. That's a pretty low bar for me. But most of the time, if you wouldn't, a more specific rule is if you wouldn't drink it with it, you probably shouldn't be cooking with it in that dish. Like if you're trying to do like a really, heavy meat dish and it's like a sweet wine, like that's probably not a good mix. Like So little tip there. So then this we're going to basically cook until the wine is essentially gone, or at least mostly evaporated. Oh, it's actually a lot sweeter than I thought it would be. Huh. Exuberant aromas of bright citrus, lemon zest, and grapefruit with undertones of fresh cut grass. Definitely what I'm looking for. All right. Well, it'll be delicious anyways. We'll add some salt, and won't be able to. It'll balance. Speaking of which, we should have probably added some salt already. Would have helped the onions break down a little bit and sweat a little bit faster. We definitely want some pepper as well, if I can find the pepper mill, which is eluding me here. Cool. Definitely recommend, this is probably a really basic tip, but I definitely recommend having a pepper mill. I do know a lot of people that just, have like a thing of ground pepper that they use. That stuff after a couple of months starts to just like taste like sawdust. Freshly ground pepper is better in absolutely every way. So we are going to go ahead and get the pasta in. This is going to take just another minute or so. You can see that the liquid is almost totally evaporated there. And again, the recipe calls for 3/4 of a pound. I probably shouldn't have used the entire pound of ground veal for the amount of pasta that I'm about to make, but who cares? So maybe like half of that, sure. Seems fine. How long does this take? Some number of minutes. Doesn't actually say, does it? When ready. Very good. Wow, this is very specific. For every 100 grams of pasta, you need 1 liter of water, preferably not hard water, 10 grams of salt, so that the boiling is faster? What? None of this makes sense. Okay, that's silly. It's probably going to take about, 8 minutes or so. Maybe 10. Let's start a timer. Big fan of timers. So now that this is kind of evaporated, we're going to go ahead and add some chicken stock. So that's about 1.5 cups. I'm going to do a little bit less than that. I don't think I need it quite that much. Definitely a big fan of this is like the Costco chicken stock. Much prefer it to like the chicken broths that you can find at the grocery store most of the time. Just a little bit heartier, a little bit nicer. The broth is totally fine. I mean, don't get me wrong. Ideally, you would be using like a homemade chicken stock. Anytime you roast a whole chicken or buy a whole rotisserie chicken or whatever, take the carcass, throw it in the freezer. Whenever you have, I didn't do it here, but whenever you have ends of onions or, scraps of carrots or, celery that's about to go bad, just throw it in the freezer bag. And then, once those all fill up, dump it all into a stock pot, fill it up with water, let it go for 2 hours, strain it off, and you have homemade chicken stock that's going to be 1,000 times better than anything you get at the store. If you have an Instant Pot or other pressure cooker, you can cut that from 2 hours to 30 minutes. You can do a little bit less volume in it, but it's still 1,000 times better. You make some chicken noodle soup with homemade chicken stock, nothing better. So Lauren is asking me about the hard water thing. I believe that is water with dissolved minerals. So people live in places that has hard or soft water. I might be wrong. It might be the soft water that has minerals, but I think it makes sense that hard water would have minerals. Anyways, it's like when you live in a place that has hard water, like it's harder to shampoo your hair, I think, or stuff builds up in your appliances and everything's terrible. You kind of, I would imagine that if you live in a place with hard water and you were trying to boil some pasta and you're not going to use bottled water to boil your pasta. So I don't know what that suggestion was really about, but it says it right there on the bag, so it must be true. So let's take a look at what else we need to do. So we're going to let this simmer for a little bit. We're cooking the pasta. We're going to add some of the pasta water. We're not dumping all the pasta water in the sink because that's like liquid gold in there. We're going to need some butter, which I don't have. I'm going to grab that. We're going to chop up some parsley. We need to shred some parm. We need to chiffonade some basil. We need to slice and toast some bread, but we've still got more than half an hour left, so we are looking golden. So I think I saw just the one comment so far on the chat. So if people have more questions, it doesn't have to be about this this particular meal, just questions in general. I'm happy to answer those. But yeah, we're just gonna keep rocking and rolling here. I think I might actually add this because I think, well, when am I supposed to add that? That's a good question. Instinct would tell me that it probably should have been already in there. Let's just have a look-see. Oh yeah, right when I had the chicken stock. Perfect timing, I knew it. So, that's in there. Alright, so that's nice and starting to reduce. Smelling really delicious. Might just go take a peek at our tomatoes, see how those are doing. Don't have an oven cam yet. Oh, those are actually it's looking done. I'm actually gonna turn that off. We're gonna get the bruschetta done early. It's gonna be great. Might even be able to clean up before the hour is done. All right, so let's take a look at these. So you're basically looking for them not to be like totally, completely ruined and shriveled and dry and done, but basically just like dry a little bit on the outside, and just like starting to, see some caramelization kind of around the edges, not necessarily on the tomatoes, but just kind of around them, which is exactly what we've got here. So that's done. So then, just in case this pasta somehow cooks magically incredibly fast, well, actually maybe go 2 more minutes. Still pretty crunchy. So one thing I learned, so many lifetimes ago, I worked for a couple months in Italy with like a weird castle hotel thing and with an Italian family, and I was really shocked because I moved there and I was like, okay, if they make me cook pasta, I'm going to cook it al dente, and it's going to be the perfectest al dente, and they're going to be so proud of me that it's perfectly al dente, and everybody's going to be like, al dente. And no, like when people are cooking pasta for themselves, like in a family setting, they cook it way past al dente. They cook it like, so there is no bite whatsoever, and it tastes way better. I mean, in restaurants, they're still cooking it al dente because that's like the restaurant way, I suppose. And by al dente, I mean just a little bit of bite, and I just don't think it's quite as good. So whenever I cook pasta at home, it's always cooked. So like if the bag says 11 to 13 minutes, I'll set a timer for 11 minutes, and then invariably I will stand there and eat piece after piece until 13 minutes has gone, and sometimes even a little bit longer than that. So, don't feel like not eating your pasta al dente or, feeling like you have to eat it al dente is like somehow criminal. I will say though, quality pasta is worth it, especially dried pasta. The biggest difference being, bronze extruded versus nylon extruded. So basically the machinery they're using to sort of form the pasta. They can run the nylon. I learned this all from Kenji in a very recent video, but they can run the nylon machines much faster, so they can pump out a lot more pasta, but it's a lot smoother, so it doesn't have these nice craggy edges that soak up sauce. So usually they're more expensive, the bronze cut ones, but they're so much better. Okay, that's getting really close. Timer's done. We're gonna set another timer just so we don't totally forget, but that's probably about 45 or 60 seconds away from being done. Meaning it's still got the tiniest little bit of bite, but I want to push a little bit past that. So this is just about there. You can kind of see most of the liquid has evaporated. We don't want all the liquid to go. Oh, this really is bubbling up. Holy cow. Almost. Oh, it's nice and salty. I like it. All right. So we're going to turn this down a little bit. You need butter. Oh, and we have to shred our parm, which again would have been a good thing to do, but here we are, not having done it. Totally fine. Don't panic. I don't know how much butter. Maybe that much. I'll start with that much and maybe add a little bit more, and then maybe just like a slightly bit more. Oh, and we got a parsley. Gosh, man, who is in charge here? Unbelievable. So, parsley, don't really have to do anything fancy here. Probably should wash this. Didn't. Not going to feel too bad about it. Oh, don't forget the pasta. Okay, that's definitely done. Oh yeah, okay. So, measuring cup. Get some of this liquid out of here. Got some pasta in there too. Whoops. Sure. Kind of wish I had a little bit more liquid, but I need to drain this, so what's gonna happen? Oh, you know what I can do? Genius. Oh yeah, there we go. Friggin' mastermind. All right. So, let's try not to drip quite all the water across the kitchen. Ta-da. We're gonna add the pasta. Boom. Give this a quick rinse just to get all the extra starch off there so that it doesn't become completely impossible to wash. And then we've got our pasta water over here, which you can see like it's like extremely cloudy, which is just like all the nice starch. I'm not going to add all this quite yet. I do want to make sure that I'm not making it too salty. I do want to get all these little noodles out of here for very tasty. Okay, cool. So, give this a little stir. So ideally, I would have been really good and like had this finish. Well, ideally, the bruschetta is an appetizer, so that would have been done well in advance of the pasta being done, and then I would have like a nice, delicious steak for my entree, and this would be my primi or secondi or whatever. Italian, probably secondi, who knows? No, primi, I don't know. I don't speak Italian anymore. So this is looking really delicious. You can kind of see, even though it's on low heat, that starchy water thicken this up a little bit. We are gonna cook it just a little bit more. Go ahead and finish chopping this parsley. We're gonna shred the parm. And this is approaching total doneness. The butter that we're going to add to it is not just for buttery goodness, but it's going to also provide some nice thickening. Plus, there's just not a lot of fat in this dish, and fat is one of those things that kind of enhances all flavors. So, you know, if you ever are eating something and you kind of can't figure out why it doesn't taste quite as good as it should, question if it's missing fat. Like, in fact, sometimes, you know, I'll make like a salsa, like a really simple like salsa. You know, like a, what is it called? Pico de gallo or something. And it'll be delicious, but it's like missing a little bit of something. And I'll just add a little bit of oil, like olive oil or just like a neutral oil. And just that extra little bit of fat to like kind of coat your taste buds, get all that flavor mixed around, is really that extra little bit. That was, you know, one of those core tenets of cooking. That's why the salt, fat, acid, heat is one of those things that's really, people are really excited about, because they're like, oh, like, wait, like I get it now. This all makes sense. How much salt did I put in the pasta this time? So quite a bit. Like I don't actually take it out with my hand. I just pour it. So there's probably, I don't know, three or 4 or 5 tablespoons in there. But again, the water was barely covering the pasta by the time it was done. Well, that's tasty. So this needs a little bit more time just to kind of thicken up a little bit. I'm gonna add some more pepper. And then crank the heat a little. Oh, it's hot in here. All right, so that is now looking great. We're gonna go ahead and add the butter. Yeah, all three. That's happening. And so you can see as this butter melts, it's gonna just kind of make everything really glossy and delightful. I never shredded the parm. There's still time. Turn this off. Add some, but not all of the parsley. Grab a parm shedding plate. Lauren, I know you're watching. I made the brownies. You saw, they're here. They're so good. Look, these are Lauren's brownies. I ate a lot of them. Please come get them from me. I don't want to eat all of them, but they're so good. All right, so we're gonna shred some parm. I love this microplane box grater. It's freaking awesome. I also love this cheese paper. So this stuff, you can buy it like in boxes, and it's just like super waxed paper that you stir your cheese in, and it keeps it fresh for about 1,000 times longer than it would have otherwise been kept, which is hugely important when you buy a ton of cheese and you don't eat it all right away. All right, that's probably enough cheese. Sure. So we'll add some of that, and again, reserve some. Oh my God. Yep. Yep, that looks good. Yep, confirmed. Okay, so that's done. I did, like I said, save some of the parsley, the parm and parsley, just to garnish individual plates, make things pretty. I move this stuff off to the side. Go ahead and get our tomatoes. Clean up our station just a smidgen. And before we take care of the tomatoes, I actually want to slice some bread to get that toasting. So this is just like a nice Iggy's baguette. You could use like a much bigger loaf and just cut it into like sort of sandwich size slices and then cut those in halves or thirds. Be totally delicious. I'm hoping this isn't too airy. I know that their baguettes can sometimes be that way, which is going to make it really difficult if they are, but whatever. I'm just going to cut some nice rounds. Let's see. And by rounds, I mean flats or whatever you want to call these. Just cutting them on the bias. These are a little bit large. Probably should have done a little bit shallower angle here, but whatever. So not too holy. Some of them are kind of, oh, I guess I could have shown you guys what's going on over here. Bam. So just kind of cutting, you know, on an angle to get these nice, pretty pieces. Probably enough, again, for 2 adults and a baby. Go ahead and get our toast on over here. So, again, most of this knowledge is from Serious Eats, but the bruschetta in America is always tomato pretty much, but bruschetta doesn't mean that it has to be tomato. You can do bruschetta with all kinds of things. Totally blanking on what other things you might do. You could do like cheeses, you could do maybe like some non-tomato vegetables, but like you're basically going to make, I think they call it fettuccine, which is just like bread that's been toasted, rubbed with cut garlic to just kind of get like a nice garlic flavor on it, and then brushed with olive oil, which is what we're going to do here, and it's going to be awesome. And then you use that as the base for the bruschetta. So just kind of add the topping after you've done the garlic and the olive oil. So to finish up the topping, which again we're doing tomato today, we're going to take these nice roasty tomatoes here that we've got. We're just going to chop these up a little bit. The bowl so that we can. Holy smokes! All right. All right, here we go. So let's just top up the tomatoes. Boop, boop, boop. Nothing too crazy, just give them like a real nice rough chop. And as you can see, like there's very little liquid rushing out of these, which is exactly what we're looking for. Again, later in the summer, definitely use fresh tomatoes. It's going to be awesome. Try to add the salt. When you're using fresh tomatoes, try to add the salt as late as you possibly can, because they will just pull all the liquid out of your tomatoes and make them really sad. Then we need to chiffonade some basil. So chiffonade, super easy technique. Basically just going to take some basil leaves. So try to grab the big ones here. Seems like probably enough. Then you take all the leaves, kind of stack them up into a pile. Roll them up like a cigar or whatever, green leafy thing you got. And then just really as fine as you possibly can. I didn't quite roll this as tight as I could have, but that'll happen. This is one of the more dangerous chopping things because it's kind of hard to get your fingers out of the way. Then give it just a slice in the opposite direction, a couple slices, and we'll just mix that in. So this recipe calls for vinegar. Definitely recommend probably vinegar with the roasted tomatoes. With fresh tomatoes, you want to taste them. Sometimes they won't need it. Also a note on balsamic vinegar. So there's like pretty wildly different types of balsamic available. So this is kind of like each end of the spectrum here. So this is like the balsamic from Whole Foods. It's like, I don't know, $3, $4, $5. This is like one of the nicest balsamics that exists on the planet. This bottle is probably like $100. This stuff you drop on little pieces of cheese, or maybe drizzle the super finest drizzles as you possibly can on something like this dish. You want to be like, you can get stuff like this that's like in the middle of the price range. You can get like a nice $40, $50 bottle that you can use for stuff like this, and I highly recommend it. It's really delicious. What you don't want to do is use this cheap stuff like it was the expensive stuff. They're not interchangeable. This one is like a sauce, or like a watery sauce where it's just going to run off things, whereas this one is like a syrup. You can almost see in the bottle how it just like totally coats the inside. This stuff is much sweeter. This stuff is much more acidic. So long story short, know what you're using. This stuff is perfectly good for a lot of applications. You're making a salad dressing or something, like awesome. It's totally great. But you probably don't want to like pour this on top of your bruschetta because you're going to ruin it. What am I doing? I need my salt. There it is. Salt, pepper, definitely olive oil, which again, we're going to use the good stuff. Again, because these are canned tomatoes, I'm going to use a little bit of vinegar. I'm going to just do a touch of red wine vinegar, which, again, if I was thinking, I would have probably gotten out of the cabinet here. There we go. And this you definitely do to taste. So there's just a little splash. Give this a mix. Ooh, that's good. Still needs a little bit more salt, which I keep losing. There it is. And just a splash more vinegar. Well, no, doesn't need any more vinegar. The recipe also called for sugar, which I instinctually didn't want to do, but I'm thinking might now actually be good. No, not with that salt. That's good. I'm gonna check on our toasts here. Let's give them a little flippy. I probably should have raised the rack on my toaster oven here because they're a little close to the burner, but that's life. We'll get a little pretty plate for these. And then, like I said, we're going to take some garlic. You want to cut it kind of so that there's the most flat side possible. So every piece of garlic's a little bit different, but all right. So basically just take whichever part of the bread is the flattest, and just kind of rub the garlic on there, and you'll see it kind of like disappears. Probably didn't even need to cut the garlic. In fact, I'm gonna use a new piece of garlic because these are just getting annihilated. And this is a thing that like you see all the time in Italy. Like people are constantly rubbing garlic on their bread, and you're like, well, is that really good? Like, not is it good, but like, is it doing anything? And as you can see, like the garlic just totally gets annihilated by the bread and is just pushed into it in a way that is really difficult to do with any other method. Sometimes you kind of lose some pieces and there'll be like extra garlicky in there, but again, nobody's really complaining about that. So, and like this is where a baguette is harder. Like if you had used like a country loaf that was a little bit like smaller hold and like bigger pieces, like this would go way faster. Like this piece is almost impossible because it's just nothing but craters. But we're gonna do our best. It's gonna be worth it. And just for presentation, I probably shouldn't have done this on this plate because now it's gonna be all like dust crummy, but we don't care. We're cool with it. All right, so now that's done. They're all nicely garlicked. We are gonna go ahead and olive oil them, which, like I said, is the second part of this fettuccine process. I think that's the right word. Maybe it's not. Who knows? So, just a little bit. And you don't have to like go crazy. Like we're not trying to like, whoa, hey, okay. We're not trying to like get a pastry brush out and like brush it on. Doesn't need to be that. Particular, God, I'm using my paper towels today. Okay, that's cool. But now we can do some sort of, you know, little artful, it looks better before, whatever. But we just load up our bread here. I can see why it told you to do two full cans of tomatoes because I'm definitely going to run out. But you know what? It'll probably be nicer if I do this. Not here. All right. Maybe we'll have enough for all of them. If not, we can steal some from the others. Blink. Like it was there all along. Cool, so One final garnish, a little bit more. It's basically not Italian unless you like finish it with olive oil. What I learned. So this bottle is basically done, so we'll go ahead and finish it off here. And then I might just give this the lightest little sprinkle of like a really nice coarse salt. Tomatoes love coarse salt. Not too much, like I'm not actually trying to season it with this, it's just for like that little pop of salt every now and again. So that's that. I might try to arrange these a little bit nicer. And completely screw it up in the process, maybe take some of them off of there. Sure, why not? Cool. So, bruschetta is done, pasta is done. I don't recall saying that I was gonna make anything else, so we'll just go ahead and plate up some pasta. And again, I wouldn't have traditionally or ideally let this pasta sit around here for so long, but it is still nice and warm. No real trick to plating this other than just put it in the bowl. A lot of times if you have like longer noodle pastas, you can do some fun stuff where you like twirl a nice little nest of pasta, but we're not here for that today. But I did reserve some more cheese. Yep, I'll put that on there. A little more parsley. Maybe we'll give it a little jam, some pepper. And again, not Italian unless there's olive oil on it. A couple drops. That seems good to me. So there we go. We've got our not really orecchiette with veal, capers, and herbs, and then bruschetta with a roasted tomato. So we got 7 minutes left. Again, open to questions, but that's that. I'm gonna go ahead and try it because I get to. Damn. That's good. Definitely better than it would have been if I'd used whatever tomatoes in the grocery store right now. So yeah, round of the bottle, better the vinegar. That's exactly the takeaway here. Do I put my kosher salt in a bowl? Yeah, so I usually keep my kosher salt in just like one of these little ramekin deals. You can put it in a bowl, you can put it in, a lot of people like the salt cellars, the little things with lids. I never put a lid on mine because I'm always getting stuff out of it and it would drive me crazy if there was a lid on it. You know, I just keep a big box of, I can do another product placement. Diamond Crystal kosher salt, no added preservatives or anti-caking agents. This stuff is, I always use kosher salt, so kosher salt are the big flakes. 1,000 times easier to, you know, pinch, sprinkle than, you know, like an iodized salt or a sea salt. Or sea salt is easy to pinch, but it's hard to dose. Diamond Crystal, like I said, doesn't have any anti-caking agents, so it doesn't. It will clump up a little bit, but like you just break it apart, it's totally fine. And the anti-caking stuff that they put in Morton's is kind of gross, so don't love that. It's also less salty than Morton's salt by volume. So most recipes, when they call for a volume, like a tablespoon or a teaspoon of kosher salt, they're talking about Diamond Crystal. So even just for that reason, it's better. Yes, Diamond Crystal, greatest of all time, no question. What else? What else you guys got? This is 5 more minutes of free Q&A. Might just start cleaning up otherwise. Speaking of kosher salt, can you really tell the difference between kosher salt and sea salt? Yes and no. Certainly when you're finishing something, you know, the kosher, so this is like a really coarse sea salt, like a gray salt, and this is kosher salt. This stuff is obviously going to be, like the texture of it is much chunkier. So it's not like when you sprinkle it on something like this dish, that you can even see here, like there's a huge chunk of salt there. And so when you go to eat it, like you're going to taste that big chunk of salt and it's going to be this nice pop of salinity. If you had just sprinkled kosher salt on there, a lot of it would have just absorbed into the tomato. So it definitely makes a huge difference. If you're doing it like, if you're gonna season your pasta water, it makes almost no difference whatsoever. I mean, maybe some person on the planet could tell you the difference between water that was salted with, you know, a sea salt versus a kosher salt, but like in almost all cases, that's not gonna matter. So for finishing, yeah, it makes a huge difference. So yeah, so the castle I worked in Italy is called Il Castello di Porretta. Let's see if I can find a link. I did cover my keyboard with plastic wrap, so it's very difficult. Well, I can't find, like, I think there used to be like an actual website for the castle, but is this it? Is this the right? Well, I'll try to post it in Slack later, but it was pretty cool. It was like a tiny little bed and breakfast. Let's see, carbon steel pans. I don't have any carbon steel pans. I have used them and they're pretty cool. I have a carbon steel wok that I use a lot. You do have to season them just like cast iron, but they are really thin. So it's like a cast iron pan, but thin. So you get a lot of the advantages of the cast iron. Like, you don't get the crazy heat transfer, the heat retention, but you get the amazing heat transfer. Plus, because you can season them, they're slightly non-stick. So they're pretty great. I plan on probably getting some soon, so I'll let you know. Flavored salt. I don't ever use flavored salt really. I would totally recommend trying some rosemary salt for your sous vide steaks. What mini oven do I have? The one back here. This is a ridiculously stupid Wolf countertop oven. It's basically like a professional oven that's small. There's a lot of things I don't like about this oven, and but it's a really great oven, and it's huge for a countertop oven. So it's awesome. If you're gonna get a countertop oven, the Breville series of ovens, or they make a bunch of countertop series, and they're amazing. I super 100% highly recommend the Breville stuff. I haven't seen the one with the dehydrate function, but I'm sure it's awesome. I have so much of their stuff, and I love it. And we had one of their toaster ovens that I replaced with this one because we wanted a bigger one, and I miss the functionality of the Breville all the time. Cool. Yeah, well, that's 5 o'clock. I hope you guys had fun. I certainly did. Again, next week we're doing Chick-fil-A. The week after that is up in the air. Let me know what you think. Right now I'm thinking maybe we do some steaks, steak and potatoes, just for some kind of old school. Maybe we'll do like a nice fun side as well as a potato if we have time. But that's it. Thanks for joining, guys, and see you next time.